Good evening for some. My name is Sasha Knox, and welcome to the Pipelines to Possibilities Black Educators Talk, formerly known as Black Faculty Talk. We thank you so much for coming in for us today. We're going to be talking about something so pivotal and timely for us, the status of DEI across the nation, and the ways in which we as educators interface with the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, some of the legislation that we have all seen across the nation, and quite frankly, the attacks that we see on DEI. We have some phenomenal guests with us here, in addition to the P2P team, but we have Brian Reeves, Dr. Jonathan Henderson, and Dr. Adrienne Grayson, who I'm going to open the floor to go ahead and introduce themselves right after the P2P team introduces themselves. So for those who do not know, my name is Dr. Sasha Knox. I am 1/3 of the P2P team, holding down the House of Career and all things opening doors for pathways. Dr. Young, would you like to kick it off? Who are you?
Well, thank you, Dr. Knox. I am Dr. Helen Young. I am one of the other third pieces of P2P. Proud to be a part of this group. My background is in counseling and work connected to HBCUs. And so that's the work I love, and love being here and love having you guys here with us today. Dr. White, you got the floor.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Khalid White. I bring the third piece to Pipelines to Possibilities organization. I am the instructional faculty guy. I've been a classroom educator for the last 15 years in ethnic studies, African American studies, and I am happy to be here with everybody talking about the unfortunate attacks on DEIA plus. And Dorinda, see you next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dorinda Bryant, and I am administrative assistant for these lovely three people of Pipelines to Possibilities, as well as the program. It's absolutely my pleasure. Believe it or not, by day, I work in the K through 12 system, and by night and any other moment I get, I support this team right here. So I love it. This is what I do, and I'm happy that you're joining us today.
Thank you so much, P2P team. So as I mentioned, we have three phenomenal guests that are able to join us today to really talk about this work, about the attacks of DEI work across our system. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with ladies first. Dr. Adrienne Grayson, please let us know who you are, what you represent, and what you'll be speaking with us.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. So I'm Dr. Adrienne Grayson. I am Associate Dean of Educational Partnerships at Riverside City College, now in the Inland Empire. I oversee a number of programs. Dual enrollment is one of them, and it's growing. I also oversee our Rising Scholars program, working with our formerly incarcerated and system impacted students. I oversee a faculty mentorship program and a bunch of other stuff. So, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We welcome your expertise in this space. Dr. Henderson.
How's it going, everybody? Dr. Jonathan Henderson. I am a faculty coordinator for professional development at Southwestern College. So I oversee all professional learning opportunities for about 1,500 employees that work within our district. And then outside of that, I'm married. My wife is beautiful. Hopefully she's here. And I love being Black. And we're Black together. So it's good. It's always good.
All right, Black couple magic. Byron.
What's up, y'all? My name is Byron Reeves. I am a director at the Career Ladders Project. Been there since October. Before that, I was the interim dean of students at Santa Rosa Junior College. And also I was in a tenured position as a EOPS counselor at Santa Rosa Junior College as well. And yeah, I'm from Connecticut originally. So shout out to any of my folks that's from Connecticut that's in the space. And I don't know why that face, you make that face. Yeah, I'm bringing in all my Blackness as well. So, and shout out to Dr. Henderson. I know he just got a doctoral degree. And I'm on that same journey. So hopefully I finish up next year at San Francisco State. Happy to be in the space with y'all.
Thank you so much, future Dr. Reeves. So I'm excited to just kick off this space and as you can see, it's all Black led, all Black empowerment. We'll be tackling some tough issues today, so I look forward to hearing your perspectives. And with that, Dr. Young, would you like to discuss a little bit more about our topic today?
Thank you, Dr. Knox. Absolutely. So today our discussion is going to center around, as Dr. Knox mentioned, the attack, the dismantling, the attempted dismantling, the just whatever it is going on, this energy that we are all concerned about around DEIA plus. So today our esteemed guests will be discussing their perspectives, their experiences, their recommendations, right? The one thing the P2P we don't just complain. We complain for a minute and then we look at each other and say, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward? And so that's why these esteemed guests are here today for us to have this dialogue, for us to have this discussion. Because the one thing that we cannot do is control the minds, the hearts of others, but we can take action. And so that's what we're here to do, is hopefully together rise up some ideas for those of you who are joining us, hopefully to get your thoughts, your input, right? Because we cannot do this by ourselves. This is a group effort. And so that's what we are centered around this conversation. We've got our own concerns. We want to hear your concerns. And so please use the Q&A feature. Dorinda will be monitoring that piece. And once we get to the end of our discussion, we want to hear your thoughts, your concerns. Challenge us, put us to the task. That's what we're here to do today. And we are just so grateful that you're here. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. White, who will begin the questions for our esteemed guests.
Okay, well, I have the privilege of asking our panelists and our esteemed guests and colleagues, our scholar practitioners and our leaders throughout the state. I have the privilege of setting it off. So this is the opening question, and it's open to all, each of you panelists. So given your respective roles, one as faculty coordinator, one as administrator, Byron Reeves as a policy creator, what steps do you think, and formerly in the California community colleges, right? What steps can California community college campuses take to help to institutionalize DEI against attacks and changes and that type of thing? What types of steps do you see campuses being able to, put in place institutionally?
Well, I guess I'll go first. I think for me, it's about the policy, specifically when it comes to folks on their individual campuses. And so, often I think when we look at DEI efforts across the state, they're really centered around individuals that or administrators or faculty members that really care about DEI efforts. And so they implement these programs, they maybe fund things that they care about, but then when they leave, that DEI practice or that procedure drops. Why? Because it wasn't instituted in the policy. And so, for me, often what we do at our campus is we look at the policy first. How can we amend the policy? How can we change the policies that already exist so that they're advancing DEI efforts so that long after we're gone, it's the policy that remains. So for example, we just amended last semester on our campus, it was Academic Policy 7160. And that policy looked at how professional development on our campus was governed. It hadn't been changed, I think, in like 14, 15 years. And so, when we read through the policy, there was no mention of equity. There, there was a lot that needed to be changed. And so what we did was we expanded professional development to be a responsibility of the entire district, not just one office. And then we instituted equity in name as one of the responsibilities of professional development to produce. It was approved, and that is the policy. So after, we're long gone, hopefully that policy will still remain. And then the last thing I'll say too is that, I think equity practitioners really need to begin to insert themselves into shared governance at their institutions as well. And so, every institution has a shared consultation council. It's a public Brown Act body. You can go, and you don't have to be on the committee. Every institution has an academic senate. They have board meetings that happen every month. And these are spaces where, policy gets produced and policy gets created and amended, and there's first reads and second reads and all of those things. And so, for us, if we're able to, essentially infiltrate these spaces, so that we can really get a lot of these policies produced and passed, then I think it'll produce some long-lasting change.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Henderson. I've seen some great strides in the college that I'm at, that has also included equity and, flex credit, flex hours for our faculty as a requirement. And so I think that that's great at the district level for each of our colleges. And I was thinking, perhaps even at the state level, California could do a lot of work here. And there's other states that offer, that have a performance-based funding formulas. And I believe that we should require DEI or supporting specifically our Black students in that formula. So here in California, we have the student-centered funding formula. And we mentioned like how are the institutions serving low-income students or Pell Grant recipients, et cetera. But even though we've had Black students performing below state average for decades, forever, there's no mention of Black students in that student-centered funding formula. So I think that was a miss. It has to be tied to the money. To me, it has to be tied to the college's money, right? So this is where Derek Bell, right, talks about interest convergence, right? So you you have to hit the dominant power where their interests lie, and I believe that that's their money, right? Their pocketbook, their wallet, and so that's one way. So I think that was a missed opportunity, that we could have been serving our students. I think that mandated positions for colleges. So for example, we have in law now that colleges have to serve certain underserved groups such as foster youth. You have to have someone to serve undocumented students. You have to have someone for basic needs. Why don't we have someone specifically for our Black students, right? Why is that not instituted in every college, that there is at least one person, if not multiple people, that our students can go to that they know will be there to serve them. So those were some ideas that I was thinking of. I think having like a student needs assessment system regionally, where we're all using the same language and same benchmarks and parameters, so that we can see how our students are doing, because a lot of our students are moving between colleges. So being able to, so that we can see, okay, how are these students being served? I think common language is key, so that we can measure folks on a much larger scale.
Excellent. Thank you. Byron, your thoughts on it?
I think, one, it was brilliant for us to start with what are the steps we could take, right? So I just want to shout out y'all for just having that foresight of seeing that we're starting with solutions, which is dope. One of the things I want to encourage us to think about is how we mobilize the student voice, in particular the Black student voice. One of the steps we can be taking is ensuring that students are aware of the power that they have, not only in their Blackness and their self, but within the institution as being agents of change, right? And so, for example, at Santa Rosa Junior College, when I was there as a faculty member, I was on the Senate, so I inserted myself in spaces that we are typically and normally not, with the intent of ensuring that the voices of Black students are there, and then you bring students to that space. And one of the ways we help moved the needle at Santa Rosa Junior College was that students asked for, especially what was happening socially during the George Floyd murder and the pandemic, is students asked and had demands of the institution, right? And by thinking about how we can mobilize students and helping them lift their voices up, we were able to move policy and practice within the institution from the students' voices, right? And so we have to think about better ways of mobilizing student voices to ensure that we can, as practitioners, go move the needle for students, and so that, because it ultimately impacts them. It impacts us, but it also ultimately impacts them, right? Whether it's in the classroom or if it's in the service. And so one of the steps we have to start to considering is we have emotion classes, we have ethnic study courses. Like, what are we doing within our curriculum that has students looking at the policy so that they can improve their experiences for the students now and behind them, right? So we have to start to think about the creative ways instead of the static ways that we can use student voices to build that capacity to move forward.
Okay, love it. So each of you kind of gave three different vantage points, right? So we're talking about, Byron just mentioned more so from what I took, participation will lead to changes in the policy and practice, right? Whether it's participating on academic senate or student participation in their needs and addressing their needs to the campus, which, great point. Oftentimes we don't hear from the students. We are prescriptive instead of, just saying, hey, what do you need? Oh, we'll tell you what you need, and then we'll try to oftentimes there's a disconnect there. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And thank each of you for bringing up the multiple vantage points that you gave. I have the opportunity to ask you another question. Right. So let's talk about a hypothetical scenario, right? We're up this year for potential budget cuts from Gavin Newsom. Okay. Shortly, soon, we'll get a new governor and a new leader for the state. We just have a new system chancellor who's probably been in her position maybe a year, if not a little bit less. So some changes are on the way and some changes have already happened, right? So, for example, we have those changes in mind. If DEIA, hypothetically, were to be eliminated from California community colleges, not institutionalized, but altogether done away with, what implications might that have on California's future student populations? And primarily, we're talking about Black students and students of color in general, but what implications may that have or might that have in your opinion?
I'll go ahead and give it a shot. So when we think about DEI work or what these offices do or what these individuals do, right? So they're promoting environments that are diverse and of course equitable and anti-racist. They work to alleviate bias and discrimination. They they help with faculty professional development and implementing culturally responsive practices in the classroom and pedagogy. And sometimes they often are linked to the compliance responsibilities at the college. So ensuring, no discrimination, et cetera. So now imagine that all of these things just stop or they just don't take place or nobody's responsible for looking at them and examining whether they are taking place, right? So, we have to figure out a way how to institutionalize this in multiple areas of the college, right? So that it cannot just reside with one person, because it is very easy to cut that budget line, right? Or if it's in one office, you can easily cut that one budget line. But if we have multiple individuals who it's their responsibility or it's internalized or institutionalized, that it's a group of individuals, or it's embedded in our academic senates, it's embedded in our classified unions, it's embedded in our strategic plans, it's embedded in our accreditation, self-studies, all of those things, then we have an opportunity to to keep it, keep the longevity, sustainability, and maintain. And then on top of that, so when we think about, if these things no longer take place, if these actions no longer exist, our students vote with their feet, and they've done this again and again and again, and they will leave our colleges if they do not feel like their needs are being met, or that they're being welcomed. And where have we seen them historically go when they are leaving the community colleges or from our public universities? Who swoops them up? Our private for-profit institutions. They are quick, right? They know how to, they're able to offer that, at least in the beginning, that personal relationship, that personal response to the students. They're there, massaging that relationship. Whereas at our institutions, we just say, oh, go to this website, right? Go to this website or email this invisible person, right? And what do we know what happens when our students go to these for-profit colleges and, they get saddled with debt, right?
Yeah.
Lots of debt. The promises of future careers are not often met, right? And so that just widens and perpetuates the wealth gap. And so that's what I see happening within the state if these programs no longer exist.
People vote with their feet. The students will vote with their feet. I love that. All right. Byron or Dr. Jonathan, any thoughts on that? What happens when DEI gets dismantled in the California community college system? God forbid, but
Yeah, I mean, I went to the AERA conference, and as states, so the AERA conference is the American Educational Research Conference. I'm using acronyms, so I need to clear that up. And folks from different states were there who have lost their jobs, right, because they were a diversity officer, or right, and they had these titles. And so I worry about the workforce, right? That's one of the big things I worry about, because a lot of us are in the workforce doing that work strategically and also very explicitly. So I worry about that. I also think that that the underpinnings of DEIA is anti-Blackness, right? It's anti-Black. And so in that, I don't know if things change much if it goes away, because I think colleges will continue to be anti-Black, right? And they continue to be the underpinnings of what's happening now. So I think the implications are that my 9-year-old daughter doesn't have the world and the schools that she would have if we continue this work ahead, right? We continue to push this work when it's explicit that we're doing this work. And we all know, and you all know, because y'all been in California longer than me, that we've been doing this work anyway, regardless if you were calling it multiculturalism or DEIA, whatever y'all were calling it, we've been doing this work, right? We've been in the practice of supporting and serving our student populations, especially in our communities. And so while the implications are dire, I think at the workforce level, and definitely what Dr. Grayson brought up is super important. I also think that we have more information. We are more equipped right now to fight those type of fights than we've ever been, right? Not only do we have the language, we know the pathways, we know we got all the smoke, y'all. And so I do think just like we've done in our history in this country, we will find a way to overcome. We will find a way to ensure that our futures and our babies' futures are paramount, that they are centered, and that they don't have the same experiences as we do. And I tend to think that the fight that we have today, though it has the same energy, it is very different than the fight that our ancestors had, right? And I'm talking about our elders and Umoja, right? So I ain't talking about the far past. I'm talking about the present past, right? Like they've been working for us to even be in this space, right? And so I think it's our job to recognize what that looks like now. And if the future holds that we don't have these positions, we don't have these commitments through mission statements of colleges, right? Through solidarity statements through college, that goes away like it is in states, already what we're already seeing. What I'm here to tell you is that people are still doing the work. We just calling this something different now, right? We're just gonna morph and figure things out the way we need to. And so I know it seems dire, but I also see that we've always figured out how to move in a way that supports our community.
An underground railroad of DEIA work of sorts. Okay. All right. Dr. Jonathan, anything to add to it?
Yeah, I think I agree with Byron. I haven't done the research, but to his point, when we look at the completion and success rates of Black students, before the formalization of DEI within our chancellor's office, they haven't really they haven't really changed. So, to me, it says a few things. Number one, I think it says, are the ways that we're implementing DEI efforts actually successful for Black students when it comes to their outcome, right? And I think the second thing that it means is like, who gets to define, and I see a question in there, so we'll leave it for there, but who gets to define what DEI is and how it's implemented on our colleges, right? And is that actually trickling down to Black students? So in a sense, if it were to be eliminated, the outcomes would essentially remain the same because that's what they've always been. But I think too, there's also, like equity of experience. And I have seen at our colleges, people talking about DEI more funding of Black student programming, the creation of Emoja, cohorts and amend cohorts across our system. There's a whole bunch of funding. You got students going to, HBCU tours. We've got an HBCU pipeline. We've got a lot of things. And there's been a lot of work that's been done to give students a quality of experience and more sense of belonging in the spaces that they can find it, but at the same time, like everyone said, I'm not sure when it comes to the outcomes, if anything would change drastically. We just might not feel good.
Might not feel good, but the numbers may stay the same, if I hear you correctly. All right. Well, this is not a hypothetical. Currently, 10 states and maybe even more have dismantled their DEI efforts, right? Texas and I thought Idaho, places like that, right, have completely done away with their DEI efforts. And we're also this year we're in an election year, right? Things may also change federally as a result of that. So given those facts, and we can just create a yes or no answer for this. Are you concerned about changes to DEI efforts in California, given the fact that other states have done away with it? Again, we're in an election year. It's a contentious election, to say the least. Budget cut, or we're in a budget deficit as a state. Concerned about it? Concerned about it going away?
You just want a yes or no?
Think it's going away?
A yes or no?
Are you concerned?
Because it's a yes and no.
It's a yes and no. Okay. Well, help me. I was trying to keep it short and sweet, but help me, Dr. Grayson. Give me the yes and the no, please. Elaborate for us.
Well, so over the years, California has wrestled with this idea of being race conscious or race neutral, right? So we have Prop 209. I was at the UC. I was at UC Irvine when Prop 209 came about in the late 90s, and I was doing outreach, and we had to adjust our how we did our business. So we weren't allowed to now say we want Black and brown students to come to our college or to our university anymore. We now have to use proxies like low income and first generation, right? And even though we tried and we were still going out there and out at the schools, the numbers took a hit, right? So for UC, the numbers we had a massive reduction in Black students going to the UC, and I don't think they've ever recovered from that. So, we have Ward Connolly before, so he implemented, he used the UC as a test case before Prop 209 came about, and so it could have really dire, effects, or it could also be like what my brother Byron was saying, is that the work is still going to continue. right? So we're not going to stop. We're not going to give up. We may have to frame it in a different way, or but we will take care of our babies, right? And we will still address the anti-Blackness when we see it, but it may have to look a little different.
Well, gentlemen, your thoughts on it. Concerned about any changes coming to California in terms of DEI efforts?
Yes and no too, right? Like,
all right.
Because I don't know, like I've been doing the research and looking, and I could be wrong through the research, but what I'm seeing is that it's only like the banned books and the banned DEI, like it's coming from a selected group of people. It's not the masses that just don't want these books, right? Like, and it's very similar to what's happened locally in some colleges. Sometimes it's not your whole Senate or your whole union or your whole classified. It's just like two people. So I also like, as to answer that question, I think yes, because if we don't start to identify who those people are and their agendas and their ability to dismantle something for their own comfort, not for the better good of the college or the students that we serve, then like, yes, right? Because we let those voices, they don't intimidate us, but they have a hell of a lot of power, right? We let them rile us up so much that we forget the mission. You know what I mean? And so if we continue to do that, then yes, California will fall victim to it, because we are going to let the voices of a few inform the voices of the many, right? But I say no to it too, because I'm just like, yo, like, yeah, but we're powerful and we dope, right? And it's so many powerful young practitioners on the rise within California that I just don't think that we are going to go quietly in the night. I think we should stand on this, right? And so I just see that as a space for us to say, yeah, we can hold the line right here. There's some other stuff we can't hold the line on, but we're gonna hold the line right here, fam. So it's a yes and no to me, but it's really dependent on how we respond, right? And what we do. And I challenge us to respond in policy, like Dr. Henderson was talking about earlier, and not respond with conversation or DI, talks, and like nah, like we need policy, we need practice to really solidify the work that we want to do on our campuses.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say that, Malcolm X said it best, man. In the South, they got wolves. In the North, they have foxes. Right? In the South, you know who your enemy is, but in the North, they'll smile before they eat you. And so oftentimes, I kind of laugh because in California, we have our DEI policies. We'll let you have your DEI policy. We'll let you have your program, but we'll just underfund it. And then we'll critique you for not, producing that unrealistic outcomes that we asked you for in the beginning. So it's the same outcome. It just, you feel like you had a shot. And so for me, that's what I think about when I think about kind of these efforts. And if I'm concerned about changes in the state of California, I'm not really concerned because it's historical. That's what's been happening, for, since Black folks were brought here. There's a shift, there's some sort of movement, and then there's a white backlash. I think the difference in 2024 is it's not just a white backlash, it's those that ascribe to whiteness backlash. So you could be brown, purple, black, blue, or green. You're still practicing that backlash. And so, for me, that's what I think about. But I think in terms of what, Dr. Grayson and what Byron often talk about is just, we're doing these things anyway. We're resisting anyway, no matter what. And that's also historical. We can see that in terms of formal movements, but in terms of individually, Black folks have always resisted in any space that they've been in. We've always had the Underground Railroad. We've always got folks food when they needed food. We had our green books, letting folks know where to go, how to navigate society in the midst of all of this nonsense that's going on. And so that because of that, I'm not concerned.
Yeah. Love it. Great answers, everybody. Thank you for illuminating, the yes and the no's of your concerns and what may be the future of DEI efforts in California, especially California community colleges. Now, we're part of a group, right? Pipelines Possibilities is a team. So I get a chance to pass it to my teammate for the next couple of questions. Dr. Sasha Knox will take us away.
So leading from some of the things that Dr. Henderson just said, Black people have always kind of found a way, right? And with one of those ways, it was Black Township, which were Black individuals owning their own banks, their own communities, their own schools, and really having the village within our own. And so there was a conversation that spawned from this weekend where individuals just kind of argued that in order for us truly to be successful, we just need to move back to this Black Township model. With all of that we're hearing about DEI efforts for Prop 209 failing obliterately in our state, what are your thoughts and notions about us moving to Black Township? Is that something that we honestly have as a viable option? Yes or no? And is that going to work in our day and age? Dr. Henderson, I seen that and go right away.
To me, it's a dream. It's a dream that I like going to sleep to dream about. It's hard because, like, historically, what happened to the Black Township? It got bombed out of existence. And so, like, for me, creating something for yourself in the midst of an anti-Black society, I don't know if it's viable. I think it's nice to think about. I don't know. I have some reservations. And at the same time, we also have to update like what we're talking about, because now we live in a globalized capitalistic society. And so it's not as simple as creating a space for yourself when everything is so intertwined and so global now. No matter where you go, this stuff persists and it exists. And you gotta, in order to own the means of production, right? Not just the bank, but you print the dollars. You know, how do you do that within the midst of a society? And then the last part I'll say too is I really like what folks are talking about, because they're not actually talking about equity. They're talking about power. Power is not equity. Power is different, right? Power is the means to define, defend, and develop your own interests. You have to have all three. And so often Black folks define it, they can develop it, but it's very hard to defend it. And so for me, the question that I have is like, how, if we create this, how will we be able to defend it? And I'm not talking like just intellectually, I'm talking about like literally. How will we be able to defend what we have? And you know what we see, especially with DEI work to bring it back, we're seeing these laws and policies being enacted as an exercise of power, literally, because folks are defining what it is, they're developing their own interests, and they're defending it through policy. I'm not sure what in this context, meaning the United States and probably globally, like I'm not sure if we could do that, but I'm open to figuring out how we can, because it would be great.
So Dr. Henderson's moving on to his own island to defend his power. Got it. Byron, I saw you on mute.
I was gonna pass the mic to Dr. Grayson, but so like one, I want to know where y'all was at, because I want to be a part of that conversation. So you're gonna have to DM me if it like I want all the smoke.
Byron, that was in my house this weekend.
Oh,
So
all
come
right.
over anytime.
And it was full too? All right, say less. That's where I need to be at. You know, like I struggle with this too, because I'm like, yes, I think I tweeted like maybe a year ago, like my dream would be to live 6 months in Ghana and then come to America in an all-Black city with Black restaurants, Black bookstores, Black schools, and somewhere near the beach, because I think the ocean and us, like I think Black folks, right? Anyway, like that's my dream. I tweeted it like a year before this, so I'm glad we heard talking. One, I don't think we can hide or protect how dope we are and our influence on this country and this world, right? And so I think that would be tough to even think about, and how many it would have a capacity in that city, right? What does that look like? And so I'm struggling that the mechanics of it sound wild, but I think what is possible and what we need to start exploring is that we're talking about really the futures of us and our Black students, right? What is and we've seen something in history by Black women, shout out to Black women, of creating the spaces of schools that inform our students only with our pedagogies, with our hearts, with our minds. And then those sprouted into what we call HBCUs now, right? What does that look like as an all Black community college? What does that look like if we could offer a degree across our state that students can take in different ways? We have technology to kind of bridge those gaps, right? What does it look like for us to have a space for all Black community college, right? Until our institutions come to the terms that they're not serving us, right? That there's not something insufficient about Black students and Black minds and Black bodies and Black hearts, right? That the history of continuing to fail Black students is not the fault of Black students, right? That their divestment into our community colleges, why they're leaving and lying on Emoja and Amend and these different programs to bring them back, that is not the problem of us. That is the problem of an institution. And so, the Afro-pessimism thought is asking us, are we going to divest, or are we going to continue to be in the spaces? And if we are, how are we going to transform it? So I don't know about a Black utopia. It would be dope. I mean, I just think about like a Motown Monday, a little chill. I think about it. I do. You know what I mean? But I also, the reality is that that's going to be tougher economically. But I do think we have the opportunity to create space across the state that if our students want to opt into an all Black experience from start to end, that they should have the option. And we've seen that in history. We've got the blueprint, so we just got to follow it if that's what we want to do.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I love this. I love this conversation because once again, it's like a yes and no, right? And like Dr. Henderson said, it's a beautiful dream. But when he brought up that word power, it just made me think about this idea I had heard. I'm sorry, I don't know where I heard it, but the idea that Black folk in the United States, we're one of the few groups who got political power before we got economic power, right? And so, we were able to do, these massive movements and demonstrations and get, laws passed. However, we didn't have the economic power really to sustain that momentum on our own. And like we mentioned, when those Black townships did get dismantled and obliterated, we did not have the economic power to redevelop it, right, to start over again. And we shouldn't have to, right, obviously. But so that's the scary thing. But then also Dr. Henderson, you brought up, just this global economy, that is also a positive, like that's a potential opportunity for us to collaborate and partner and develop economically without having to solely rely on the state of California or the federal government here. So the fact that we now have this global economy and this virtual economy where you can now talk to anyone on the other side of the globe in an instant, I think it does potentially open up some new doors and some new opportunities that we might not have had in the past, right? And so I like to think of it as, let's keep all options on the table, right? Because maybe we start off in a certain sector and see how we can grow it.
I want to say one more thing too, just to add to what Dr. Grayson said. So like when I was a student in undergrad, we had 3 Black organizations: Pan-African Union, Organization of Africana Studies, and the Black Student Union. And they were railroading us on campus. There was a lot of stuff going on, even with the faculty in the Africana Studies department. So one day, me and the president got the bright idea to say, okay, let's bring everybody, all the Black organizations together. Maybe we can join forces, create one big organization and push for change. And the first thing that they said was, well, who's going to be the president? And it was too much. It was so much about who was going to be on top and who was going to lead and who was going to be in front that we didn't actually get anywhere, and we continue to get railroaded. And so for me, like, I also think about, even more, I think in 2024, Black folk are more invested in whiteness than we have ever been in the past. And so, like, if we create our Black township and you're president here or your VP here, but in the township, we need you to pick up and put down chairs, will you do that for the people? I think somebody wrote a book about that. I think it was called The Possessive Investment in Whiteness. And so, like, we get perks and we get, notoriety, and we get degrees and we get all of these things, and they're granted to us by these institutions and these European and Eurocentric institutions, and it makes us feel great and feel good. But when we are able to build our own, what if we don't bring that with us? Are people gonna be okay with that? So what do we do when, like, we're not all on the same page, or do we all even need to be on the same page? I'm not sure. That's just something I'll have to think about.
Man, y'all making it tough. I gotta steer the boat back, right? We won't go down that rabbit hole. We will together, right, on a different day. But on this time crunch, we're gonna get back on track. One of the underlying tones, though, is power, right? Who defines it? What is it? What does it look like when you have it? And so steering it back to this conversation, particularly around DEI work, I'm curious to know, how do you define DEI work? How does it get defined in your locus, right? So on your campus, in your department, how does it, I only got one question left, so it's a multi-question. I'll go through it with y'all. How does it get defined as success? And then how do we continue, who defines that? And then how do we capitalize on that so that it can be successful in the future? So I asked a bunch, so I'm gonna go back over it. So what is DEIA work in your locus of area? Who defines it, right? Is that something that you got to earmark, you write your own goals, and then you get to define the success? Who defines the success, right? And then how do we defend that success as we move forward?
I'll jump in because I think I got the smaller of the pie on this one. Because I work for a nonprofit educational organization, we get to define DEI the way we want to, and that's a beautiful thing, because I am happy to be in community and in partnership with my CLP team, who literally we have conversations about equity every day, right? About what it means to do that, and we retreat about that. And so I'm going to leave this conversation and let my other two colleagues handle that piece of it. But I will say, for me, when I see it at an institution, the way I define it is justice and joy, right? Is that when you can actually start to realize the brilliance of our students, and that's what DEI to me brings out, is that just because you have you're not able-bodied doesn't mean you're not amazing, right? Just because you are a particular color or one of your identities are at least from power, then that don't mean you ain't dope. And I think this is what it allows us to do. It allows us to see the possibilities, see the future. And one of the most beautiful things that we're doing on this call is, in an oppressed state, living in an oppressed state, we are laughing, smiling, because we love what we do. We love what we do. And I get joy from seeing y'all. Whenever we're in the conferences, that's always love. And so the way it looks to me is that is joy, but it's that justice piece, right? It's that interrogation of power that leads us to justice. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I'll just say it's asking the most impacted communities what they need, listening to them, and then doing what they tell us to do. To me, that's it. It's very simple. But then it gets complicated with all of the politics and everything else. I think in terms of who defines it currently, there's a lot of entities that define it. Most of them are organizations that don't talk to marginalized communities. I mean, we have California, state policy, and guidelines. We have outcomes that only track some of what we're interested in when it comes to implementing Black student success, but the majority of that kind of gets left. You know, we've got folks from, you know, different that have lobbying power, you know, from different corporate organizations that are interested in workers. And so they go and lobby to implement policy, right, that doesn't necessarily support our student success, but it supports the production of more workers. And so all of these things are kind of like at play in the war that we're having for equity. So it's very, very hard to kind of wade through that. I think at our college, just kind of locally, you know, our board and our institution has, you know, developed definitions for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these are the definitions that we use as the basis for the work that we do. We've also split student equity from equity and engagement, the policy and the institutionalization of it. And so we've got administrators that work on equity with students, and then we've got administrators that deal with district equity efforts. And they're in there really literally within the policy and the institutional procedures, defining and redefining them. I think when it comes to what Sasha asked about, and this is the last thing I'll say, when it comes to defending it, one thing that we started doing is we stopped naming it equity or DEI. We just put the language that we want to see in it and don't call it at all. Right? So, you know, what does it look, basic need? Like, what does it look like? We want students to have laptops, food, books, this, and that. We don't name it that, so that if the policy comes and says, get rid of DEI, anything named equity or DEI, well, that's not what that name is. This is what we're talking about here, right? Even when it comes to, you know, for example, tenure evaluations for faculty. You know, it is equity, but it's also, you know, what's your course content look like? Are you chunking and chewing? Are you doing this and that? Are you doing it? There's a lot of things that are equity that you can talk about without naming it that. And that's one strategy, along with also calling it.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues. And you know, so how what it looks like to me is not being satisfied with the status quo, right? So it looks like you being sick and tired of being sick and tired, and then actually doing something about it at an institutional level, though, right? So not just as a one person here and one person there. It means, you know, educating our colleagues and having a culture of asking questions. I really like Estella Ben-Simone and what she said, you know, 5 components of equity mindedness, right? So it's one, race conscious, right? So examining things from a racist lens. It's 2, being systemically aware. So being aware of the histories and the systems that got us here in the first place. Being institutionally focused, so fixing the institution, not trying to fix our students, right? It's evidence-based, right? So looking, disaggregating that data, you know, regularly, and being action-oriented. So now that we have all this information, we actually have to do something about it. So that's how I try to measure whether or not something is equity-minded whenever we're trying to do any type of work, whether it be the whole college level or even just in my office, right? So that's the measuring stick. And unfortunately, though, our colleges have begun adding the word equity to individuals' titles. And so now they're the VP of equity and, I don't know, add on whatever you want to add on, right? So and, you know, so, but it's equity in name. And now you have an individual who's overseeing equity efforts, right? And may not have ever received any type of training in that way, never, like it's just in their name. And now they're the chief equity officer on their campus, and they don't know how to interrogate data, and they don't know how to set specific goals related to equity. And so we have to really be mindful of this and be able to rally against this at our campuses. And so if they do have that equity in their name, make sure that it is not in name alone, and we need to be holding these individuals accountable whenever we can.
Couldn't find my mute. Sorry about that. Gotta love some Stella Benson, right? Some ways to make this a lot more measurable. I am happy to pass the baton to Dr. Young, so she can bring this ship home, because we are all over.
Wow.
Really great thing. So powerful.
Man, what a conversation we are having. Y'all bringing the heat. I'm just gonna say it. We are just, I'm completely engaged in listening to you, and you guys are hot. You're just hot. I'm gonna ask you 3 individual questions. So one addressed to just Jonathan, to you, Brother Byron, and then to you, Sister Adrian. And then I'm gonna probably follow up with one all question, but I'm gonna jump into it. This one's for Adrian. How might administrators and faculty work together in support of increased campus DEIA efforts? We know that you've had some experience in that area, so we'd love to hear your thoughts. How can those entities work better together to increase campus DEIA efforts?
There's lots of ways that lots of colleges have been doing some excellent work. And what it boils down to, you know, implementing strategies inside the classroom and outside the classroom, of course. You can't have one without the other. So you think about creating a sense of belongingness on campus. I think a lot of campuses have really taken this on because I think a lot of folks have recognized that this is something that they can do, right? This is something that they have some agency and control to do. And so when we think about, you know, how our campuses have, you know, started this work, you know, creating Emoja centers and homerooms and Black student success centers, there is a possibility for our students to feel a sense of belonging in these spaces, in these Black spaces on campus, and then not feel a sense of belonging outside of these spaces in the larger areas of campus, or not feel a sense of belonging inside that classroom. So it's really important for administrators and faculty to work together, because you can't have one without the other, right? And so, you know, being able to, you know, affirm and validate students' intersectional identities inside the classroom is key and is important, just as much as it is needs to happen when students are, you know, going to that admissions counter or, you know, speaking to that financial aid officer. And so we have to work at building communities on campus together, and collaboration is necessary for that.
Love it, love it. Brother Jonathan, this one's for you. How can faculty better inform their practices of DEIA in the classroom? We know you've got quite a bit of background and research in this area. So if their campuses are not bought into the DEIA, how about we start there?
Got it.
How can individuals influence their own areas?
Yeah, so for me, I think it starts with your house, what you're doing in your classroom. So every faculty member, you know, whether the campus, and I'll say most faculty members, whether your campus is, you know, gung-ho about DEIA or not, can request their course level data from their institution, their institutional, their IR area. And so once you do that, then you can find where the gaps are in terms of who you're serving along race, class, gender, and so on and so forth. After that, then you'll probably have to do some, you know, scholarly work and some introspection on your own. Reading, oh my gosh, reading, right? One good book is Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond, right? So you can begin to read and then begin to kind of go and then start practicing a lot of what you're doing in the classroom around ensuring that your students in your classroom are successful. Once you've kind of gotten some practice with doing that, then let's look at my sphere of influence. Who's around me that I can actually go and talk to. Maybe it's not in my department, maybe it's in a different department. And we could get together and form a community of practice around this stuff. So that we're actually meeting, looking at our syllabi, looking at how we're teaching students, and then going in there and really kind of just really iron sharpening iron, learning how to do this stuff together. Once you have that, start having that, and then you start adding people that are of like mind, that forms a critical mass. And then maybe then you can go and say, hey, this is what we've been doing. These are the outcomes that we've been getting in our courses. How about we formalize this? Right? Maybe that's an academic senate resolution. Maybe that's, I don't know, going to your professional development office and then training during opening day or during, flex days for faculty so that they can begin to produce this. What I'm really talking about is kind of like a grassroots approach to kind of implementing this stuff on campuses that are anti-DEI. Because they're anti-DEI, you're gonna get pushback. 1000%, especially in a lot of, and I'll just say it, in a lot of our STEM departments.
Yes.
Right. We've had some things happen. When I was a regional coordinator for Emotion, I used to talk with Emotion coordinators where that happened a lot, especially in the math department, where all these students are so successful that the math department thinks you're doing something dirty. We're gonna investigate you. Right. So then that starts to happen and you start getting hit with a lot of that pushback. And so to me, it's really about building those spaces and places. I think I think one of the emotion practices is community building, right? So building those spaces and places where you can create that work on your own. And there's always individuals on your campuses, even though they might be kind of anti-DEI, that are doing the work. You just got to find them. So that's what I would say in terms of campuses that aren't kind of implementing that stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to campuses that are, there's a lot of like statewide and even local, regional trainings that faculty can go to, many of which are like free of charge, that they can go to even learn about implementing DEI practices in the classroom. The Chancellor's Office does it a lot. I know Career Ladders Project, they do it often. At my college, we have an Advancing Equity Teaching Academy, which is a year-long course for faculty that they take to actually learn how to implement that stuff into their teaching. And they get salary advancement if they complete it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that folks can do if they want to learn how to do this stuff.
Woo! Y'all still dropping the gems. So what I've heard in these two answers, and then Byron, you're up next, and I'm going to reframe what I heard because I think it's going to funnel into what I'm going to ask you. I heard Adrian talk about what kind of an environment are we creating, right? I believe that's what I'm hearing you as I summarize what you just shared. Brother Jonathan, I heard you say, what is happening in your classroom first, right? Looking at us individually to figure out what kind of things are we doing to either support student success or not, right? So what I'm hearing is, how well are we collaborating? How innovative are we, right? The things that we're willing to do to see differently. So Brother Byron, here's your question. How might campuses or districts better collaborate with organizations like Career Ladders Projects to institutionalize DEIA Plus in their vision, their goals, and their strategic plans for student success?
Yeah, I mean, the first easy answer, just call me. Just call me. Just call us. Go to the website, shameless plug, go to the careerladdersproject.org. I'm gonna keep it simple at the top of it, right? And I'm gonna finish with the end. So, I don't know if Dr. Knox is putting that in the link in the chat, but that's a shameless plug. Just call us.
Got you. We're gonna make sure it happens.
No, but I think for Career Ladders in particular, and for other organizations like EdTrust West, they do amazing work. So we got other partners in the field, Link Learning, Alliance. So we have other partners in the field that do that are focused over have equity focus, right? For career ladders in particular, it is our mission to because we have a global, when I say global, we have a California perspective, right? We're not like I was just honed to one institution.
Mhm.
Our unique and very skilled practitioners who've all been community college faculty, administrators, classified staff, they've been all there. So they have that lived and learned experience. And what we do is we partner and we try to hear what's happening, not only at the surface, but what's happening under the surface, right? And we partner with institutions to really help try to better understand not only the problem, but how to move forward, right? In that implementation piece. And so we've been successful with colleges and institutions and leaders and other organizations by understanding that there are other colleges and other institutions that are doing this work in a way that you can, right? And so how do we introduce that's very specific to the context of your college, right? And so we do a deep dive to try to better understand the mechanisms, the levers at your college, the triggers at your college. And then we try to work with the leaders of that college, of those institutions, to build a plan going forward, right? And so our work really is in the depths of partnership and in the spirit of collaboration. We're not coming in with a particular mission that we want to drive home. We really are listeners, and we really want to help drive whatever institutions are doing. And I heard something maybe a few years ago when I was in a Senate meeting and I was trying to drive this particular piece home, and somebody was like, "You're preaching to your own choir." And so that means sometimes people are deaf to that. And so where I see career ladders coming in is that we can be that outside entity that is coming from a loving, supportive space to say there is another way. And I think we've been super successful within our work around the state and within statewide is for us to be able to help do that. Lastly, I want to add to that is we partner with everybody too, right? Shout out to Dean Williams and Dr. Bull at the Chancellor's office. And everybody, I don't name everybody, but so it's not just us, and we're not just coming in with our own, but we are hearing not only what's happening locally, but what's happening at the state level, and we're helping colleges understand that, interpret that in a particular way so that they can move their equity goals forward. And the last thing I want to say is a shameless plug, because Dr. Henderson brought it up, but if y'all Humans Who Teach by Shamir Reed, like, read your books, y'all. Like Dr. Anderson dropped that little nugget, but it is there's some dope scholars who are thinking about this work, who are moving this work forward in the literature. And then shout out to Dr. White, shameless plug. I got your book too, man. So thank you for the work that you're doing too.
No shameless plugs here, brother. If it needs to be identified and recognized, let's do it. Let's do it. Wow, y'all. Part of what I'm hearing in a lot of your responses today is, for some of us, Dr. Henderson, we need to check our ego at the door so we can get the work done. Byron, I'm hearing you say we need to maybe drop our sensitivity about things, right? So we can get the work done. Adrian, I'm hearing you say we got to come together and really figure out how to collaboratively work, which means we may need to get our own needs out of the way and think about the needs of the student. Forget that you're trying to climb the ladder, right, to become that VP and all those other things, and think about how what you're doing impacts the student every day. Every day. You guys are dropping big bombs. So as I summarize all of that, what does DEI mean to each of you professionally? Think about that. And whoever wants to kick us off, what does DEIA plus mean to you professionally? I think I'm going to ask Dr. White and Dr. Knox even to respond to this question. And I think I will too, because I think we need to go on record as what we think it is professionally.
Well, I think of Issa Rae's quote, I want everybody Black to win. I want that. I want them to want me to win. right? Like I want them to want me to win, and I want, as an institution,
Yeah.
and I want them to help set me up to succeed and to be successful, and not just as, just me as a professional, but when I win, the institution wins, right? When I'm doing my job correctly, or when I'm supporting students, that's a win for the institution. And when all of our colleges are doing that, that's a win for our state, and that's a win for our nation, right? And so it's we're asking folks to invest in our students and to invest in ourselves as professionals. And I'll just say from personal experience, so I didn't share, so I got into this work, I shared that I had done outreach for a lot of years. And then I was also director of student equity at my previous institution. And so we need that. So speaking as a person who this was in my title, you have to give that support. And you have to be willing to, the person who's in this role, it's literally their job. And when we think about equity, right? And
Right.
I'm not talking about, just what's fair or equal, right? It is my job literally to bring unfairness to you. Like it's my job to call it out. It's my job to say what the problems are that exist in the institution. And it's my job to offer some solutions, but really to work, as you mentioned, Helen, collaboratively to identify solutions and to implement those solutions and to evaluate those solutions. Like it's that's part of the process,
Yeah.
right? And so, so sometimes that person may seem like the squeaky wheel, right? Or may seem like the one that's always complaining. But it's like literally in our job description.
What I do.
It's what I do.
That's it.
Right. And so you have to create an environment, a space where those issues can be brought forth. And it doesn't have to be in a combative way, right? And it doesn't have to be where anybody's pitted against another. It really should be about us moving the needle forward together. And as we shared, this needle hasn't been really moving. And so the question is it the way that we're implementing this, right? So if I tell you that, equity is not about doing workshops or only time management and study skills, or having a potluck, like that's, those things can be included, right? But that's not where it needs
That's
to
not how we move the needle.
That's not how we move the needle. Right?
Amen.
So, yeah.
Amen. Byron.
So what it means for me professionally is that I think the first community college ever in America was like 1901 in Chicago or something like that, right? And since then up till now, most of our teaching force, I think it was like 80% last time I checked, is white.
Yep.
So what it means for me to be in a space with y'all and to be thinking about DEIA, which one is understanding that the undertone is anti-Black, right? And we got to sit with that. And also that we are sitting and embodying the space that we are resistance, right? And that the DEIA work is resistance to a system that it continues and is still mostly white, dominated by white bodies, right? And so our existence and all the brothers getting PhDs and sisters getting all the, like, that is our ancestors shining through saying, y'all can do this, right? And because what we need to understand too is that our experiences as seeing us in these spaces right now in leadership and as faculty, as teachers, is that our daughters, our children will see that, right? And want more. And that's what we're asking for from our institutions right now, right? So what we did over the last, I'm bad at math, but since 1901 up till now, how many years that is, education has been white mostly, right? Generally and nationally has been white. Art, for me professionally, it means that I am a part of a movement that is disrupting the white normatives that want to continue to see the systems exist the way they are. and we continue to bask in that, as well as the struggle. The struggle is real, but we are the flavoring of education, right? We are the, you know what I'm saying? Like, we are the mac and cheese and the yams. You feel me? Like, we got all of that, and we got to believe in ourselves that way, or else the DEIA work will continue to be bland. It will continue to have no flavor, and it will continue to, even if it comes from people that look like us, which we have to acknowledge, it will continue to not serve students where they need to be. So for me, it really means that we're disrupting. And even if we call it something different in 3 years, it doesn't mean that we aren't here. It's actually, we just need to bring more with us.
Loving it. Brother Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll say 3 things. First is, my favorite Ella Baker quote is, "Strong people don't need strong leaders." And for me, like, that's what I'm about. I'm about fostering strong people, people that have the agency and self-determination to move no matter what, whether they be student or employee. And especially when I think about, one of the tenets of anti-Blackness is to deny Black agency. And so when I hear Black folks, especially Black employees, saying, "I can't," or "that's just the way it is," or just certain things like that, that is the goal of anti-Blackness. And so for me, like, how do we get to a space, or what can I do to help folks get to a space to where we're able to see our own personal power and our own personal agency, so that we know we can move whatever we need to move no matter what. I think that's, for me, really the mission. And I really think about, when I was a student, and the professors that did that for me, that literally fought and got blackballed and blacklisted and got fired, and all of these things that happened before equity was formally introduced, for me. And when I asked them why they did it, they said, "For you." And so I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, I've done that too.
Yeah.
I'm not a good practitioner. So that's the first thing. And then the last thing I'll say is, one of the other quotes that I really appreciate is from Zora Neale Hurston. She said, if you don't speak about your pain, they'll kill you and say that you enjoy it. And so for me, I point out elephants. That's just that's what I do. Had to get the doctorate, and I had to become the faculty member so I can keep my job while pointing out the elephant. You know what I mean? So that's the strategy that I took to get there.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what it's gonna take, because anti-Blackness and racism aren't static. They change, and you have to keep pointing it out. And often when you point it out into places that people don't want to look at, especially when it's internal critique. And so, that's another thing in terms of my professionalism that I like to practice as well. Always, for the advancement, of Black communities.
Dr. Knox or Dr. White, what's your professional, what does DEIA look like to you professionally? What does it mean to you? What does it look like?
This is not fair. We were not prepared for this moment, ma'am. The quote that sticks out to me the most, and I'll backtrack, is, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's tools." Right? Particularly for me, in the spaces that I carry are in career technical education and career education overall. So my lens is really looking at doors and pathways that promote and elevate our people from poverty, at least to middle class, and then from middle class, and then higher, and then higher, and then higher. Because that generational curve of what happens when they get access. And so the reason why I bring out Audre Lorde's quote is because a lot of the spaces that I personally also work in are white males across the board. They still hold the power. They still are on your boards. They still, I love the George Floyd era where everyone was putting out these DEI statements, but the first thing that I was going to is every organization's board of managers, their leadership team. And I was wondering, with all these colorful and beautiful statements, I remember us speaking in groups, and I said, I hated it. I absolutely hated all of these statements that from Nike down to Adidas, I hated it because there was no institutional change that came with these statements. It was all fluff. It was all transactional. It was all performative, right? And I say all of these to say until there is actual colorful change from within, right?
Mm,
And not all skin folk are kin folk. So I don't want just bodies in the seat. I want institutional change from thought to action. And that's what's going to change our workforce. Our workforce is in dire need of individuals, period. From anything from a nursing tech to a firefighter to a teacher and anything in between. But we cannot continue to institute this change the same way that we've been doing it, because the only way that we've been doing it is from a lens of gatekeeping and protecting that has been from, you know, the master schools. And so a large part of this for me, DEI work means liberation, right? It means individuals in the workforce being able to define what that freedom and what that liberation looks like for them. What are your passion and interests, and how do we get you there? And if you just came to paint, baby, we gonna teach you all the skills to paint, and you don't have to be Picasso, right? Like that was not your end goal, and honoring that, that's part of the process too. So I'll stop there, but this is not fair, because they're probably, I'm gonna leave and be like, and I should have said this and I should have said that, because I didn't get fancy questions today. But I'll leave it there for Dr. White.
that's okay. Dr. White.
Well, if I could just, all these answers have been great, right? If I could just summarize and try to encapsulate it all for me, I think it is really being able to gain the sets of passports, keys, tools for your toolbox to address and problem solve, and ultimately to fix the solution, find and fix, become the answers for solutions that specifically affect your particular group.
Yeah.
So whatever group or groups that you belong to, there are some specific sets of keys or locks to open, some specific tools that will help that particular solution. So I think that when you talk about equity, justice, and things of that sort, it's a case-by-case basis, depending upon which group or groups that you identify with most, and having the solutions to, you know, or having the answers to solutions that affect those particular groups that you identify with and you say that you're a part of and that you live and breathe. That's it for me. If I could put it in kind of a,
Absolutely.
maybe that's bigger than a nutshell, but small, you know, in a small box.
I love it.
Mhm.
So I'll leave you with my thoughts. And I've been thinking about this in the last 2 weeks that we've been preparing for this webinar, and having deep dive conversations, Brother Brian, here at my house with my husband and my son and folks that showed up for Sunday dinner. And I said, well, we're gonna kick this one around a little bit. For me, it's about a mirror. And I believe as an educator of 20 plus years in higher ed, K through 12, I think it is my job to bring in a mirror. And my job is simply to reflect to you what's going on. So my husband and I talk about being each other's mirror a lot. That if my job is to do nothing else, is to bring you as much truth as I see as possible. It's up to you to do with whatever you want. But my job is to put that mirror up and allow you to at least see it. So yes, I am the bell ringer. There's some stuff going on here that, you know, y'all know it ain't right. Somebody's got to continue to ring the bell of truth. Otherwise, this country will never live up to its tenets. I think it's about us holding this country, these systems, accountable. Even if nothing changes in my lifetime, my granddaughter's lifetime, if I don't do it, like Byron said, how can I sleep at night? How can I leave this place? I got to leave this place a little bit better, a little bit changed than the way I found it. So for me, DEIA work is about bringing in that mirror, showing that mirror, being that real bell ringer, so that folks, at least, even if you don't do anything with it, I can leave the room and say, well, hell, I went in the room and I did something. I may not have changed anything, but they know I was there. They know I was there and I was attempting to do what I thought was right. This is good stuff. We have time for, I believe, a couple of questions that were thrown in the Q&A. I'm going to hand it over to Dorinda, who's going to throw them to the group.
Well, this is short and sweet as it currently stands. We have one unanswered question, and that is from Tex Wambui. It says, hey Tex, he says, how can California be a leader in the DEIA efforts from a policy perspective, especially at the federal level?
I think for me, I think number one, I think California is a leader. California tends to be one of the most progressive states out of other states. It doesn't mean that it's perfect, but at the policy level, it does tend to be more progressive. So, you know, California hasn't enacted, for example, anti-abortion policies. When we look at EEO policy, we see that California also has extended EEO policies to folks of different sexual orientations, gender identities, and things like that. We've included, California has a lot of that already included. At the same time, I think, you know, the test is going to be whoever gets into this office after the election. And, you know, they sign that executive order that says you must do this. The question is, for me, like, okay, what is California going to do? Are we going to abide by, right, these racist, anti-Black policies, or is California going to say, no, we're not going to do that? Or are they going to implement that into policy? So we shall see. Historically, I'm not sure if it has. I haven't done the research. But I think, like everyone else has said here, you know, we're not concerned because we're going to continue to do the work anyway. But that would be my answer.
I have a quick answer. I think from a policy perspective, whatever state, if it's us first, when we acknowledge what we've done to Black people in this country and in that particular state, then that's when we can actually start to move the needle. Everything else, to me, in my personal opinion, not COP and not connected to anything else, but in my personal opinion, until we atone for the crimes that have been committed against Black folks, that's how we become a leader. That's how you change the narrative across the country and across the world to say, actually, we did do that, and here we are working with community leaders to fix it, to change it, to transform it, to reform it.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree. You dropped the mic on that one. And so maybe to take it a step further and say, so you have the acknowledgement now, you know, codify it, you know, put it into policy, practice, law. And so I wholeheartedly believe we need a new master plan. So when it was written in 1965, our educational master plan was, so I do think California is a leader because that has been our track record. We have prided ourselves on being a leader. And then now we have this 60-something-year-old plan that does not fit the needs of our changing state and the demographics of our state, and just the economic power that the state has nationally and globally, right? It's one of the global economic powers. We really need to be leveraging that a lot more, especially when it comes to education. And so I think that's so, you know, embedding those anti-Blackness policies in the new educational master plan that we need to be writing, I think is key.
These are some fire answers, I just want to say. We actually got one more question from Ruby Baldabinos, which, by the way, Dr. Grayson, she says, hey, how do you bring the discussion, or how to bring the discussion about DEI and racism to colorblind stakeholders? From, again, Ruby at Riverside City College, excuse me.
Okay, I gotta feel free to disagree. Feel free to disagree, okay?
Oh no, dun, dun,
I
dun.
believe that for
Here he
colorblind
goes.
stakeholders, I believe that for colorblind stakeholders and for individuals that are anti-DEI, It needs to be a condition of their employment. We have a saying in professional learning. Our saying is, if you try to teach somebody that doesn't want to learn, they're not going to learn anything. So why are we investing our effort, time, and attention into putting funding and dollars towards trying to change the minds and hearts of people who are not interested?
Yep.
We instead should take that money and give it to the folk that aren't interested so they can multiply it and produce change for our students. And so for me, for those folks, it's a condition of your employment. I'm sorry, if you don't want to do it, then you got to go to another community college, but it's not going to happen here. So to me, that to me is the only solution, and that's what we've kind of tried to implement in terms of putting that into policy on our campus.
No one disagrees here. No one disagrees.
Nobody, nobody.
But we would all still be gainfully employed, you know? The conversation might look a little different.
Right.
Well, and so I absolutely agree, a condition of your employment and a condition within the hiring practice. So weed them out from the start, right? So we have some individuals who are here right now that we got to work with. We got to keep them here, right? But as we filter them out, you know, let's be honest within the hiring process, right? How much weight do we put on that equity question, right? The one equity question, the one that's in the interview, how much weight, you know, or, you know, what are their answers? What are they including in their documents, their literature, and what are we letting slide? Because a lot of people, from what I've heard, the horror stories, they'll say, oh, well, they didn't answer that question correctly, but look at this. It's like, no, let's go back, right? This is important. If we're saying that it's important, we have to show that it's important. We have to demonstrate that it's important. And so we have to make that a condition of the hiring as well.
I'll just jump in and say evaluations. You got to include love and equity in your evaluations. And if your class ain't filling up, never mind. I'll let it go. I'll let it go.
Is that it, Dorinda?
Yep, I was just getting ready to say that concludes all of the questions from participants online.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Mhm.
We'll kick it back over to Dr. Knox, so we'll wrap us up.
Well, that's all, folks. You ain't got to go, but you know, you got to go home, but no. I think the main things that I wanted to really capture, I was able to throw some things in the chat. So I just want to go back to the ways in which our colleagues define equity work. I love that future Dr. Reeves said, this is justice and joy, folks. This is the way in which we move the needle through justice and joy. And this is an interrogation of power that really leads to justice, this type of work. Dr. Henderson wants to live in this utopia, sign me and my family up. We will pay all of the regional fees and we don't need a leader. We just need our own bank, okay? And I will happily live there. And now I have something new to dream about at night. And I love that Dr. Grayson said that the way in which she defines equity work is not being satisfied with the status quo and making sure to make those changes at an institutional level. And I think all of our leaders really talked about making sure that the work that we do here is not living on the backs of one person, and talking about the ways in which we all can walk away, making our institutions just a little bit better. But I challenge our audience to think about ways to institutionalize the work. And I heard Dr. Henderson use a practice to say, we don't say equity work anymore. So when the equity hammer comes down, you won't find evidence of that. Instead, we are just saying that we are doing justice for students by providing the instructional tools like computers. We're doing justice for students by providing basic needs and resources. And so then when we go to scrub for equity and they want to scrub us out for the line item, you won't find evidence of that. Instead, you'll just find evidence of how we're doing great work for our students by doing the things that they need most. So I challenge you all to go do that. I thank you all for being here with us today. Thanks for thugging it out with us in the future as well. And you all have a phenomenal, phenomenal day. Thank you so much. Every Sunday, Brian, every Sunday. Every Sunday.
Well, not every Sunday, once a month, once a month, once a month.
Every Sunday. I stand around.
I'll